Good morning, chat. I hope you guys are having a good day. I got a nice video planned today. Today we're going to be talking about aircraft guns and like what's gone over the history, because I think it's pretty interesting how they've gone from, being the main weapon that everything uses to almost like being eliminated entirely from aircraft. So we're going to go through that. I just want to say, if you guys are enjoying what we have on the channel, make sure to subscribe, like the video, of course, all that jazz. But besides that, other stuff, there's a video that I want to make about stealth that is going to take quite a bit of research, and I haven't gotten around to doing that yet. So I'm gonna hopefully work on that soon and bring that to you, because that would be a cool video. I would like to do that. And other stuff, like say edits. The edits I used to do, I want to do some more of those, but they of course take a lot of editing, and I want to improve my quality with more techniques that I haven't used before. So yeah, we can get into all that, but let's just start with the history, really. It started out early, I guess, World War I, right? We'd have a lot of really early ones would be machine guns just mounted onto the front of a biplane, right? It would just be these simple things that be put either on the wings on the outside or right behind the propellers. And the way that was set up is it was timed to the actual engine so that it would never actually hit the propeller, and it would fire. So that was like the original armament on aircraft, and it worked pretty good. I mean, that was the only weapon that a plane could use to shoot down another plane, right? Because bombs, that's of course for ground. But yeah, that was like the original thing that they had, were these 7mm, 8mm, think the bar, the M2 Browning, that kind of stuff. I guess the MG15, stuff like that, were like really early ones that we saw in World War I, the interwar period, and then moving into World War II, we get into some more interesting stuff. Of course, the main thing, at least the start of the war, were machine guns, right? Now, the machine gun is denoted as any automatic weapon that fires a caliber underneath 20 millimeters. So that would include, most machine guns, I mean, really simply put, and anything above that 20 millimeter threshold that fires automatically is an autocannon. And then there are other variations of that, but that's the general rule of thumb. If it fires a higher than 20 millimeter round, a higher caliber, if its caliber is higher than 20 millimeters, it is an autocannon. We go into World War II, and we saw a lot of, at least American aircraft, we saw a lot of M1919s, M2HB, like 7.62, 12.7 millimeter or 50 BMG, a lot of those calibers, and they were, general things. But this is where we're getting into monoplanes and more robust, heavier duty metal aircraft that were harder to take down with these machine guns. So then you would end up running into situations where you have like particularly robust aircraft, like say the issue of, I don't know, a P-47, and you have an early Bf-109 shooting at it with like MG-34s, so MG-34s or whatever else, that's not going to take it down right away. So then eventually we get into autocannons, which we start to see as a mainline thing. Of course, autocannons and cannons separately, there were some tests with higher caliber rounds, such as 30 millimeter, 40 millimeter, 50 millimeter autocannons and cannons, which were used during the war. But the mainstay was going to be in that 20, 23 millimeter, but there were some like up 30, 40 millimeter autocannons that I'd say the Russians used more than anything. But at least for America and the Axe, a lot of the Axis powers, it was going to be that 20, 23 millimeter range, with like the MG 151 autocannon, if I'm correct, was one of the most used ones on a lot of German fighters during the war. It was a 20 millimeter autocannon, very fast firing. Then we go over to the American side. They had the AN M1 and M2 and some other variants, if I'm correct. Again, I need to be entirely sure about this, but Yeah, so they had those, and that was kind of that was, I'd say, where we really started to get into the cannon area. And it's interesting because this was where, I guess, autocannons really reached their prominence. Of course, there were still machine guns, and thing is, after the war, autocannons started to make way for some other things in other militaries. I would say the Russians, they still use autocannons because they perfected it, right? And that's the main thing. Technology is what changed this, because we never really left that cannon caliber, right? We're still, most countries still fire between 20 and 30 millimeter rounds, but it's in different ways. So you transition out of World War II, and we're getting into jets and larger aircraft, and I would almost say a little bit weaker. And then this is where we start to see technology catch up, and the cannon becomes a lot more powerful, right? Because in World War II, at least in the start of World War II, the main gun on a plane was it was your main weapon, but it wasn't, at least at the start, going to be something that would instantly, guaranteed every time, just shoot a plane down. It's gone. Later in the war, once the weapons started to get more powerful, that could be the case, but the planes were very robust and advanced, and they could take a lot of beating. So once we get into the Cold War, we get to jets. These more, I don't want to say sensitive, but they're more delicate machines. Like, they can take a beating, but they can also not take a beating at the same time. And we get into the rotary cannon, for example, or the Gatling gun, if you want to call it that, which the United States used starting in the 50s, and that we still use today because it is amazing. Think of it this way. At the end of World War II, you could see machine guns or autocannons firing at maybe a little over 1,000 rounds per minute, which, for reference, an M4 fires at, I think, 700 rounds per minute. An MG42 fires at 1,200 rounds per minute, so 1,000 is pretty darn fast, and that could do a lot of damage. Now we go to the autocannon, which its design, separate from an autocannon, I mean, a rotary cannon is different in design from an autocannon because it uses 7 barrels generally, which rotates in front of the chamber with a new round, so you're not always firing out of the same barrel, and this allows it to fire exponentially faster. We're talking, you know, the M61 fires at, I think, 6,000 rounds per minute or something ridiculous like that. That's over 100 rounds per second, and these are 20 millimeter rounds. Really something else, because modern, or at least not even modern, but rotary cannons are just unbelievably powerful, because once they started being used, you would see, like, it didn't come from a point where you had to, like, you know, start really peppering a plane. If you landed like a short burst on like a wing or something, that plane was done 9 times out of 10. Like, these cannons, the shortest burst would completely destroy any aircraft in the sky. The power, they just became so unbelievably powerful, and this applied for everything. Like, say, modern Russian autocannons fire at like 3,000 rounds per minute with 30 millimeter rounds. That's ridiculous. I mean, those things, again, same deal, massive caliber, shooting at unbelievably high speeds. It just rips you apart. The Europeans, they like to use the revolver cannon, which is kind of like the antithesis to the rotary cannon, because what it does is, instead of having a bunch of barrels rotating, it has a cylinder with chambers that rotate, which, you know, serves the same purpose, just rotating a different mechanism. They fire slightly slower than rotary cannons, but they are still extremely powerful, and with the caliber that they fire, it's gotten to the point where they just destroy aircraft. So then, you know, we have, by the time of like Vietnam, every jet has some type of cannon on it that is gonna, if you land like less than a second of a burst, you got the kill, right? But then we move, you know, as we go through Vietnam and further past that, we get into missiles, and then we start to question the importance of the cannon and how much value it has, because it's not easy to land shots in BFM. And thing is, with missiles, you could technically, at that point, you know, you realize you don't have to be right up within a mile of somebody to shoot them out of the sky. You can fire a missile, and the computer inside will guide itself and take out that aircraft before you even see it with your eyes. So then the value of it started to decrease because you could only hit from so far, and missiles had more of an importance. Of course, the US military was a little too quick to jump to this because the earliest versions of the F4 Phantom didn't come with a main gun, which caused it to suffer a lot of casualties because it wasn't a very maneuverable aircraft. It was fast. It was an energy fighter through and through, very fast, but it did not corner when faced with MiG-19s, MiG-21s, MiG-17s, that kind of deal. So it would just get shot out of the sky because missiles back then were crap. They kind of sucked. They weren't very accurate. They didn't have a very high G rating, so they weren't able to turn as sharply as modern, like AIM-9Xs and crap, can track its way onto an enemy plane. It was definitely short-sighted because, you know, later versions, I think it was the F4C, if I'm correct. I forget, it might have been just, I don't know, the specific variants of the Phantom, but like really shortly after. Of course, there were attachments to put an M61 on to the wings, but you could then they eventually made a nose-mounted one. And ever since, there's been a cannon inside a military aircraft. Of course, you know, we're getting to the point in 2024 where we're seeing really, really low amounts of cannons, or not cannons per se, but ammunition, right? Say the F-35, it has man, I don't even know, it has a really stupid name, the cannon, but it's a 25 millimeter rotary cannon that fires, I forget, it's like 3,000-4,000 rounds per minute. Extremely devastating, but it only has around, if I'm correct, 200 rounds in it, so you can only fire it for like a second, 2 seconds, right? I mean, that's all you realistically need, because if you land a good shot, it's gonna take something down. And the F-35 is a plane that has gotten to the point where you have missiles that are much deadlier and have much better range, so if you end up in a point where you actually have to use a gun in an F-35, you're already kind of screwed. But that doesn't change the fact that all planes still have guns in them, except the J-20. That's an example of a plane that's starting to get a little too modern for guns. The J-20 does not have an onboard cannon, so that plane is purely, I mean, it is a bit of, it's an interesting fighter because I'd say it's more of an interceptor, more of a naval, like a carrier defense fighter, kind of like the F-14 in a sense, but and it's definitely not designed for dogfighting or anything up close, but so that thing doesn't have a gun. And I think as we get, you know, further into missile technology, we're gonna see guns being phased out, because, you know, there's that one Israeli missile, I guess tests have been done, it's able to turn around. It can turn around and hit you on its next pass at the plane that it was fired at, which is ridiculous and a little scary. So, you know, you got to think about it. We might not be seeing guns on like more modern airframes in the future. Whatever the next, I would guess, whatever the next 5th generation, 6th generation American fighter that enters mainline service is going to be, is probably not going to have a gun on it, depending on how fast missile technology propagates. You know, let's use a fancy word today, chat. But yeah, I don't know. I just wanted to talk about that real quick. I hope you guys are having a good weekend. Mine was rainy. It was a pretty rainy weekend. I mean, it's Saturday right now, so I got Sunday. But, you know, hope you guys are having a good day. Make sure to like, comment, whatever you want to see, subscribe, and I will be sure to take a look at it because I read the few comments that I get. So, hey, guys, have a great day. And chat, type 1.